Сайн байцгаана уу эрхэм сонсогчдоо. Та бүхэнд Unleash podcast-ийн шинэхэн дугаар хүрч байна. Бид энэхүү подкастаараа та бүхэнд хувь хүний хөгжил болон манлайлалын талаарх чанартай контентуудыг цаг алдалгүй хүргэх болно. Ингээд манлайлалын чадвараа хөгжилцгээе.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a growth series with ALDM. Today we have a very special guest to talk to us about what is a growth mindset. Welcome, Rebekka.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
How are you doing?
Good. Thank you.
Awesome. So can you introduce yourself to us? Where do you live and what do you do?
Okay. So I'm from Irvine, Southern California here. And originally, I'm actually from Taiwan. I grew up in Taiwan. I came here 25 years ago. Built my family here. And I'm a therapist. I'm working towards my license. It's my passion to learn about how a human mind works. And it's my passion to help people in their relationship, in their life issues. Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. I love to learn more about how human minds work too. So let's just jump into our topic. Can you talk to us about what is a growth mindset and why is it important?
I would say that a simple definition that I would give to a growth mindset is this idea of that our mindset is open and flexible to what? To new relationships and to ways of thinking that are very different from our own. And for me, what I have observed in people and the issue people bring to me, right, in my work, is a lot of times that they are feeling stuck. They're feeling stuck in ways, right, like in their life, in relationship, in their work. So, the work we do is to understand like where are they stuck, right? So I would say why this growth mindset is so important is because when we are stuck in the place, right, doing the same thing again and again, and now, or we're feeling like we need to make changes, but we can't, then we won't be able to reach our goal. We couldn't, right, solve the problems. So it could be really discouraging and challenging if you feel like you're stuck. So how we're having this growth mindset of being open and have that flexible way and even creative way to receive information, to find solution is so helpful in life.
So how do people grow their mindset? Is it something that people are born with, or is it something that we can intentionally develop in our lives?
Yeah, I feel that's such a great question, right? When we talk about this growth mindset, and it's a very trendy topic, right? And it's a very natural way because we all want to grow. We all want to, right, continue to be better of ourselves, whether in our personal life or in our career. So I would say, yes, it's natural, right? We want to grow. And that's a natural reflection, right? When we say this natural mindset, if you think about how our human body, right, is naturally want to grow, right? When a child grows, is naturally, you don't have to tell a child to grow. They naturally just grow. So that's something I would say, yes, right? Why this growth mindset makes so much sense. Like everybody wants that. However, when we say, yeah, how do people develop this growth mindset, right? Does it come with it naturally? I would say, then we have to kind of backtrack a little bit, understanding what the mindset is, how our mind works, right? I would say, if you look at scientifically, right, our mind is sitting on this nervous system of our brain, And we know that our brain is the one of the most intricate and complicated organs, right, in our body. And our human mind is fascinating and incredibly complicated to our human relationship, to the influence our decision, right, our relationship, our life choices. So I would say that if we want to understand our mind, we have to say, how our mind works, right? And surprisingly, our mind has actually this tendency. Yes, it wants to grow, but it also has this tendency of want to look for pattern, look for predictability that brings safety and stability. What I'm saying is that, because we are a human body, right? And our mind sits on this human body, but our human mind and body have this instinctive nature of need to survive. And because of that, we tend to find ways to help us to feel safe and comfortable. Because when we reach a certain level of safety and comfort, then we can focus better, right? We can be more creative. That's why when you are uncomfortable, if you have a headache, right, that's discomfort. It's hard to focus, right? When you kind of predict what my day looks like, then we can become more efficient in certain ways of doing things, like devote energy to certain things, right? So that's kind of instinctive nature to create that pattern and create that structure for us to become very efficient. However, when we are so used to, right, the structure, this way of thinking and doing for a long time, then we have a hard time of being open to new ideas and people
So it's
who are very different
like,
from us.
Almost like it can be taught how to, some of it can be taught from our parents or from our education system. This is, think this way, or you do this way, or maybe traditionally ways too, right? It almost sounds like.
Right. So, we are taught to think certain way and do certain way because this is the better way, right? And which is true. We learn if you do this, if you study for 1 hour and take a break, right? Then you feel better, right? Which is all good things, right? Or if you have a good sleep habit, right? And you go to bed early and you wake up early, good thing. They're all true, right? Or maybe even a workplace, right? If we want to set up structures, this is the rule, this is the policy you follow, right? And this is how we do it. And they are really, right, structures are needed, right? Because it gives us boundaries on what we're supposed to do and what our responsibility is, and what our what are the expectations, right, people have on us. So those actually give us, right, a sense of stability. I can know what to expect in life. Then I can focus on what I need to do in front of me, right?
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
That's what I would say. What happened, the biggest problem is not we have this way of doing things. I think what the biggest challenge people might not realize is when they do have a certain way of belief or way of doing things, and then new ideas come in, people that's working with them that's very different from them come in, do things very differently, then they have a hard time of incorporating that. They have a hard time of seeing other people's way or seeing other idea that's so new and different from them. And I feel a lot of people, they come in, the complaint is they only see those people and those ideas are the problems, are not right. So the challenge is not I cannot change. The challenge is I cannot even, they don't even realize they're stuck in this mindset. Yeah. So it's a very interesting idea about like, oh, we have all this mindsets, but when we are inside that mindset, we're not aware of it.
So I always thought that growth mindset is more common among young people. Is that necessarily true, or how do adults change their mindset for growth?
That's a really good observation, and you're probably right. Generally, we generally, young people, they are more open to new ideas. Why is that, right? And we also see some of the pattern in older people. They have a difficulty of, right, with technology, with things for them. We might have more elderly, right, parents or relatives are more resistant to like some new technology, and you often hear they say like, "But the way I've been doing has worked all this time. Why need to change?" In some ways, true, right? If it works for them, sure. But I think why young people has more openness to different things, because I believe young people and children, right? We all have this curiosity. How things work, right? Oh, because for a child, it's constantly new things, right? And you always like, you're growing, you're going to change school every 3 years, right? Every 6 years, every class, you need new classmates. It's natural, right? You're constantly getting new ideas, right? Every year you're going to school, you're learning new things. So their mind is constantly in this learning mode, right? To open new ideas. So it's very natural for them to say, oh, we just know new ideas. Let me learn about it and try it out.
That's a great way to look at it, because in adults you have more experience, you've gone through life, and then you know what works best. But then that pattern of doing the same thing over and over again, makes us stuck in the same place. And I think that's a very important point.
Right. Yeah.
So can you give us some examples of a growth mindset being applied to in real life?
I would say, right, growth mindset is almost like, it could be seen in many, many different ways. We kind of talk about this one way of being open, right, to new ideas. I would want to kind of maybe elaborate on the other aspect of this growth mindset, which is being flexible and being engaging and responsible. What I mean is about this flexibility and engaging and responsible is more like when we have encounter with people, right? Have a conversation and they're telling us like, oh, maybe you should do things this way. Maybe like we have encountered like a problem at work, right? We've been doing the same thing but it doesn't work. And we have a subordinate come to tell us like, well, maybe we can try that. And then we will have a hard time to think like they have less experience, or maybe they have less education. Why would their idea works, right? But the thing is like we have this already a bias towards what that person can offer us, right? So that's already like a barrier, prevent us to be open and to be flexible. Or maybe we also could have obstacle in our mind to say, well, if we don't have this money, but if we don't have this resource, if we don't have this connection, then this is not going to work, right? That's the mental block to feel like all these things are what's going to make it works. Then we won't be able to think outside those barriers, right? So in a way, we can be flexible. We can be flexible to say, well, what if this time I don't do this way, right? Because I think when we why would people say, oh, because I have this experience, when I have done this, I have made this mistake, that's why I don't do this way anymore, right? That's why a lot of people who have a lot of experience will give us advice, right? Oh, listen to my advice, or you learn from your own experience. Yeah, I don't do this way because I have learned my lessons, right? Which is so true and valuable when we have those experiences. But I would say, yes, when we learn those hard lessons, it actually also make us afraid to make mistake. Right. So then we like, oh, we cannot make mistake. So we must keep doing this way or that way, trying to control situation. Then it really limits our ability to be flexible. What if we do make mistake this time? What if we try this thing and we fail, right? But then if we try this thing and we fail, but we learn more about what's going on, what's wrong with the situation, then we actually still learn something very, very valuable than doing the same thing, not doing anything. So when we are willing to kind of being flexible, stepping outside of what we have been doing, then we create an opportunity, we create a possibility, right? So this flexibility opened the door for us to have a new way of looking at things, to have a new way of finding out what's wrong. And that's where I believe the growth mindset really leads to a lot of possibility and the changes.
So it's about of not being afraid of the failures, but then being open to the challenges and overcoming obstacles with new ways and being flexible in that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. One more question. So how does growth mindset change how we view ourselves and others around us?
I love this idea about making that connection, right, of understanding ourselves and understanding our relationship with our external world, whether it's through career or personal relationship, right? Because from my training is that our mind is really consists of these three main elements, which is what we think, right? Our thoughts, and how we feel, our feelings, and our behaviors, right? If you think about a simple things like, I need to go to Costco today, for example, right, to get some office supplies, right? But then for some people, they love Costco. For some people, they hate the line, right? Right? So then we have different feeling already, right? And then we're like, oh, can I get somebody to go to Costco for me? Or even at this time, right? Oh, I don't want to go to Costco because the social distancing, right? So we have different feeling, right? Then it affects us, right? Then we're like, oh, maybe I don't need to go right away today. I can wait, right? So it affects, right? If you think about this, like, oh, I need to go to Costco, the thoughts, what I need to how I feel about going to Costco, right? But then if I don't like to go, then it affects my decision already and my action. Then I'm not going. I'm actually going tomorrow. So our mind is constantly influencing how we view our world and how they influence our decision. But the questions about how we view ourselves is so unconsciously driving a lot of our decisions. And I would say this idea of if we're not aware of how our mind, what our thinking and feeling is, then we actually are being driven by some of the mindset. It could be fixed mindset, it could be growth mindset, it could be the open mindset that's driving us, but we are not aware of it. So that's something I feel if any takeaway that the audience can have is to realize that the growth mindset is something that we have to come within ourselves. We have to be able to discover ourselves, to learn more about ourselves first. And I would even take what we just said earlier, this child openness, right? A childlike mindset, being very curious. This attitude, being curious about the world, and take that, apply it to yourself. Like being curious about yourself. What I mean is this, right? If you make this decision, right, you go through your, like the example I gave about going to Costco, right? It just happened really fast. And that's how our mind is. It influences each other very fast. And even like we didn't realize, oh, how much I hate going to Costco, right? How much I scared to crossing people, right, in the store because the virus right now, right? So that make me really don't want to go to Costco. And those feeling actually is very strong and very subtle, but we might not realizing it, right? And then that's why a lot of people found themselves procrastinating about some of their decision, and they don't know why. I really need to go do that, but I just can't. I keep putting off, because their emotion and their thoughts or belief are making that decision for them already, for not going to do what they wanted to do. Then I would say, yeah, so being curious, like, oh, what about these things I've been wanting to do that I haven't been able to do, right? So ask the question, what was I feeling? What was I thinking? Right? A lot of times, even like, ask yourself, what am I doing? Right? Some people will maybe sit in front of the computer, right, for 2 hours after, right, they started working, but they somehow get distracted, get to a social media site, right? And then before they realize it, like, whoa, 2 hours has passed. They didn't realize what they were doing. So I would say that's a kind of like a first step to say, yeah, what was I doing? What was I feeling? And what's that about? If we go from there, then we have it, right? In a sense, we kind of like looking at your mind, your own mind, right, from an outside view. If this is your mind, like a circle, then you're looking at instead of like stuck inside, like this is just swirling inside your head, right? With realizing it, that you're coming out and then look at what's happening within yourself. Then you are the outsider. You're the third person, can observe it objectively and even kind of intervene and make changes within your mindset.
So some people, to go off with that question, some people don't even know that they're stuck in their mindset, and they think everything's okay. You just talked about going out of beyond your circles, going out in a third person and look at your situation. Is there a simple way to do that? Any tips on that? Like how to go into that third person and look at your circle? And
I would say this have to come from people who want to make changes, right? I think
that's right.
They have to desire that. They have to desire that.
That makes sense.
And I would say the flip side is, because what we have been taught a lot of times is to kind of place a judgment on what we're doing. Maybe one helpful way is not to so quick on placing judgment, which could be like, oh, if I have been procrastinating, right? Which is a phenomenon, right? It's something that we don't desire. But if we place that judgment, it's like, oh, I'm so lazy, right? Or I'm waiting for someone else to do this for me, right? A lot of times the obstacle to kind of prevent us to go to that place have a growth mindset is maybe finding excuse for ourselves, right? Or blaming others, like, well, I can't do this job if they didn't do their job, right? Which is their truth at some situation, right? Just say like, oh, I cannot. But a lot of times it's like people might have this mindset like, well, they didn't do their job, so why do I have to do it right? So we have to also recognizing that those are actually some of like mentality that's not healthy for us, like whether it's blaming others or not taking responsibility. But sometimes it could be our emotions are really big, right? We get really frustrated and we get really discouraged with situation. So we also have to recognize those are the obstacles that prevent us to have this awareness.
Thank you so much. So we have a few more questions before we wrap up things. So how does growth mindset make people succeed in their life? What does that have to do with that?
Right, like we mentioned a little bit about, right, this growth mindset, allowing us to tap into this ability to create changes, right? Create changes that we want, right? Help us to get unstuck, right? And I would say another, I really feel like there's a lifetime benefit of this growth mindset is actually helping us to be in better relationship, which is what we all want, right? We want to have fulfilling, right, connecting relationship in our lives, especially with our family, right, our loved ones. And you also want to have good relationship at workplace, right? We understand the importance of having, good social skill, right? Yes, we can have those skills, right? But this ability that if you think of people, right? If you look at people and you form some bias, or there's some unconscious bias in you, like if they're saying things or they dress a certain way, or their way of thinking just so out there, right? Or even maybe their background is so foreign to you, then we might have a hard time, right, to connect with them. And then we will have a difficulty to create understanding and to communicate effectively. So that's the part, right, that we all desire to have, to form a good relationship. But I think without realizing, right, our mind actually determine a lot of how we see people and how we determine, right, how much we want to reveal ourselves to others, what type of relationship we want with others. It is determined by this mindset we have. So that's something I would say that's the huge benefit of having a growth mindset, because it's allowing us to actually to be more open and to the people that we love, and form a more deeply connected, fulfilling relationship.
You mentioned it before that overall we are all relationship beings. We are made to design to have relationship within each other. So I think that was a really good point. So what are 3 things that you can tell us about a growth mindset that we can apply right away in our life?
I would say, one of the main things kind of continue with this concept of relationship, right? I feel like it is a challenging time for us to have, right, face-to-face interaction, to have very limited social interactions. But I also kind of want to take advantage of where we're at right now, as right in our social distancing. I would say to be reflective of where you're at, with relationship. Because relationship, it is the foundation, it is the environment of background of how we actually can have this growth and growth mindset. When we talk about, right, we want to grow, I would like people to think about you have actually this invisible person inside of you, which we do, which is actually this mind, right? And what this mind need is like a person. You need three things to grow, right? You need nutrients, right? Proper diet. You need exercise, right? And you need rest, right? We know that, right? For any healthy child to grow healthy, to grow, you need all these three things. So if we put that in the idea, this analogy for our invisible person inside of us, right? Then the first thing is the nutrient. What's the nutrient for our mind and for this person? And that is, right, love and the reality. What do I mean that? We know that love is like encouraging, accepting, right, nurturing. So do we have people in our life do that for us? So this is the time to kind of take an inventory, right? You know, how can I continue to build a healthy relationship, right? To instill that nutrient to myself. And the other part is this idea of reality. And some people call it accountability, right? A lot of times, some of us, we tend to be very hard on ourselves, right? Just like, oh, I should do better, you know. Oh, we did the best we can, but the result's not up to, right, our standard, or still not up to our boss standard. Then we beat ourselves up, right?
Yeah.
But then we need people in our life to give us our reality, right? To say, well, you know, Grace, well, Rebecca, I see, right? And they know us. They know how hard we work, right? They can say to us like, well, I see you do the best you know how to, right? And can offer that grace and offer also reality, because that's also true, right? But if we don't have people in our life, then we don't know, right? Our judgment is too lenient or too strict, right? We need people in our life to offer that to us. And that's considered a nutrient to this invisible person in us. So I would say that's kind of one thing why, for me, if anything, take away is to seek healthy relationship in your life. And I would say the second thing is going back to this idea of being curious. I know this might not be natural, especially for us as Asian, because we have a very high moral standard. You know, we are taught a lot about what is right, what is wrong, which is important. We need to be able to tell between right and wrong, right? But we also know the world is not just simply black and white. There's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of ambiguity. It means like things are not always clear. It's actually very complicated. So what I'm asking is like, well, there's actually a lot of space to understand what's happening within yourself before you can place a judgment. So that's kind of what I said earlier about this idea, like to hold off judgment, right? Before, when you start to procrastinate or when you didn't do your job, right, the way you wanted, you disappoint yourself, or people disappoint you. Let's hold off the judgment. Let's ask some question first. Let's ask the what, right? What am I doing? If you found yourself like so upset, you know, screaming and yelling and blaming others, right? And notice like, oh, I'm so mad, right? Notice that's what you're feeling. And notice like, oh, I'm actually yelling at people. I'm actually saying hurtful things, right? I'm actually asking, and then ask why I'm feeling this way. Because it could be something really small, right? but somehow we have a big reaction, right? It could be because, well, I have worked so hard for this, and this person, right, ruin it. I'm trying so hard. So if we can understand why, right, if it's something small, but we have a big reaction, and then follow what has happened before. So continue to be curious and ask questions. I always tell my clients, like, what has happened before this incident? When people tell me like something happened in their week, I always ask, what's your state of mind before this happened? Right? A lot of times they went home, they eat a whole bunch of cookies that they don't mean to, right? Or they stay up all night watching Netflix for 5 hours and they don't even know what happened, right? And always ask, what has happened before this incident? Because something happened to us or in us that make us want to need something else for the next action. So just being curious, right? Instead of holding off judgment, like, oh, I'm so bad with self-control, I'm so this, or somebody is so inconsiderate, but ask what has happened before this. Then we can slowly to understand. And this understanding, yes, it doesn't create immediate change, but it created an opportunity for our mindset to be shifted, to see things differently. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting and important. How it can be really simple, like growth mindset. It sounds very like, this fancy, but then our actions, it's as simple as, just loving each other, being intentional in our relationships. And it's great to hear that all of us can work to improve it.
And one thing I would encourage people is even look at this growth mindset, right? Not as something like, oh, so far, so out there that I need to attain. Is to believe that it is a state of our mindset. We could have this mindset at some moments, right? We could be very open to investment opportunities, right? But we could be very conservative to parenting ideas, right? So just know that our mindset shift around the topic, with the people we encounter, with the situation that's very personal to us. That shift back and forth to different degree too. However, right, how would you know if you're shifting or not? Nobody will know. Only you can, right? So that's this idea of developing self-awareness is so critical. And because without noticing, asking, by being observant, what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, you wouldn't be able to notice the shift.
Wow, that's really important. Well, Rebecca, we're unfortunately running out of time, but I want to ask you lastly about any other books or resources that you would recommend for us to learn more about growth mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many good resources out there. I would say recommend 2 of the books that's very personal to me. I think one of the background is I'm trained under this author and professor, Dr. John Townsend, for my for my graduate degree of clinical counseling. And so he wrote a lot of personal growth books. Probably one of the most famous one is the book called Boundary. Some of you have heard of it.
Yes, we've actually done a series on boundaries. Great.
Yeah. So I most of all his books, I have read actually most of it, and it has been very instrumental, not just for me professionally. Even before I went to school, I read his book. Really influenced like how I view myself, how I learned to to continue to see growth for myself. I would suggest on this topic of how people grow, the personal growth. I like this book called How People Grow. The subtitle is What the Bible Reveals About Personal Growth, and it's by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. Although it has a biblical and spiritual perspective, but I feel like what they have shared is very foundational, and it's still very applicable to all our lives, right? Whether you're a person with faith or without, it's very applicable, and they really have the gift of using simple language to explain some of the big principles, and also give you very practical, like what to do. So I highly recommend this book called How People Grow. And the other book is also written by it's by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's called The Power of the Others. The subtitle is called The Startling Effect Other People Have on You, from the ballroom to the bedroom and beyond, and what to do about it. I like this book because it really emphasizes the personal relationship have with us, without realizing how our relationship affecting us, grow us, or hurt us, right, or put us down, then and know how to work through that. It's really difficult to actually see growth, right? The idea is that you actually cannot grow alone. You cannot grow. You cannot have this growth mindset. I keep reading a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts, right, and taking a lot of notes and repeating, memorizing things, or practicing these 5 things I do. Then I'm gonna be a person with growth. It doesn't work that way. We're social beings. We are meant to grow in the context of a healthy relationship, and that give a good like a framework, understanding, and how to gain that. And the last book is Talking to Strangers. The subtitle is What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know by Malcolm Gladwell. I think this is also one of the New York bestseller. I like this idea of, right, I would say in this time and age, social interaction, talking to new people, right, talking to strangers, it's actually a challenge for a lot of people. How to be comfortable, and why do I even have to do that? So I think that book gave a really refreshing perspective to say, like, what does that mean? How do I do that? And even like inspire you want to do that. And this kind of go back to this idea, right, of the growth mindset, the definition of being open and flexible to new relationship. So I recommend these 3 books, and I think that I can pass you the information to you, Gracie, in email, and if you want, you can post on the website.
That's great. Definitely will have those available. Comment down below on the title of this live video. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for doing this interview with us. And I'm sure so many people received so many information, and I hope that this will unlock their journey of growth mindset in their lives. And we appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Any last words, Rebecca?
I feel like it's really my honor to have this opportunity to speak to very different audience from like my own background. I appreciate this opportunity, and also feel very fortunate to share something that's also passionate to me, right? To have healthy mind and a healthy relationship. Right? It is my profession and my passion, and it's my desire for all people. And I think one main thing the message is that, I want to know it's accessible. This is accessible to everyone. You don't need to have a lot of money or resource or education to have healthy mind and healthy relationship. And thankfully, I feel like the topic, right, of a growth mindset and a healthy mind is becoming more popular online. So I encourage anyone, if you need help and have more questions and more curious, ask. Feel free to maybe post questions, and we can have more discussion next time. Maybe topics like, oh, I didn't think about this, and I wonder, right? Maybe some even application part when you say about this topic, and I have trouble. Then maybe we can have a discussion on how this leads you to your change and your growth.
Well, thank you so much, Rebekka, again.
Thank you too.
Yes, for our audience, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed and got some takeaways from it. And we'll see you from our next growth series. And thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Энэхүү подкастыг Азийн манлайлал хөгжлийн сан танд хүргэлээ. Би дараагийн дугааруудаараа дамжуулан манлайлал, хувь хүний хөгжил, гэр бүл, сэтгэл зүйн эрүүл мэнд болон бизнес эрхлэлт гэх мэт сэдвүүдээр мэргэжлийн хүмүүстэй ярилцсан танд хүргэх болно. Өнөөдөр бол бэлэг, маргааш бол боломж. Илүү сайн маргаашийн төлөө хамтдаа хичээцгээе. Бидний анхааран сонссон танд баярлалаа. Дараагийн дугаараар иргэн уулзалтаа түр баяртай.